There are typically 4 ways that people will carry a baby. First is in your arms, and this is probably the most common, is to have the baby with legs on either side and you're kind of carrying them on your hip. If you're doing this all day, you're most likely going to end up with some compensation patterns in your body. So if this is comfortable for you, then also try out this and see how that feels. But ideally, baby would be right in the middle and you're holding them with an upright spine. You can hold them on the side with an upright spine, but that's not really realistic for longer carries. So one of the things that Jenna and I talk about is simply that if we are truly engaging with a child when we're caring for them, then we're not going to be holding them while doing other things as frequently as people tend to think that we would. Because if I'm over here cooking dinner and holding baby, then we're not really connecting and we're not really engaging each other. So if when I'm holding baby, it is as a means of transportation, then I'm going to let them know what's going on and I'm more engaged with them rather than just keeping them on my hip all day and doing things. That's not going to be great for my body, and it's also not going to be great for our relationship. So the next way is in a car seat. This car seat, as a reminder, is for safety of your baby or the baby that you're caring for in a car. If you're spending all day in a car seat, this puts baby's spine into a C-shaped position and is not ideal for their development. But I'm not going to buckle this baby in because the car seat is obviously too big for this baby. But if I'm going to pick up the baby and carry them in this, number one, I don't recommend that they stay in here for too long, but sometimes this is necessary. So just simply lifting the car seat like this is probably the most common. But instead of doing a deadlift and keeping an upright spine, we often see people lean or compensate and lean the other way because it gets kind of heavy. So one of the ways that you can work around this is to actually have the car seat face backward and then fish your arm through from the back toward the front to grab onto the knob right here. So I'm going to hinge my hips back, let my arm go through, and then stand up. So I've just deadlifted on one side. This looks a little less stable and seems like it would be kind of uncomfortable, but it's actually very comfortable to be able to maintain an upright spine and walk with the baby in the car seat like this. The next way, here we go, baby, is in a carrier.
Hello, baby. So when you're looking for carriers, you want to make sure that the carrier itself creates a nice seat for their baby. So their hips and their legs are fully supported all the way down the back of their legs. So when we're getting the baby into a carrier, we always want to communicate to them what we are doing. So I'm going to put you in the carrier, baby. I like to have the baby nice and close and supported on my body, bringing them up to the front and supporting their butt, making a little seat. And then I'm going to bring one side of the carrier up over my shoulder. I'm going to bring this arm through. Make sure the baby's nice and supported, and then bring my other arm through. And when they get into position, making sure that the carrier is nice and even across the back of their legs and they have that M position with their legs and their hips. And then also keeping our comfort in mind, I like to make adjustments with the carrier, make sure that the back buckle is nice and situated on my body so I am able to stay nice and upright with my walk or my carry and not leaning forwards or leaning backwards.
The last way that we see babies carried around is usually in a stroller. So a few notes about strollers. Number one, I don't want to see a child sitting in a stroller if they cannot sit on their own. And this is something that Jen and I went into throughout the whole moveMentors Caregivers course, because if we're sitting children, even if it seems like they're supported by the back of the stroller, we're actually doing their development a disservice. But if when they get to the age where they're sitting on their own, we can place them in a stroller and continue to move around with them, and this can be a nice option. I do not prefer running with a stroller because if I'm going to be maintaining stability of the stroller, then I have to have one hand on it, which then is going to change my gait. So I don't recommend running with a stroller, but one thing to keep in mind when walking with a stroller is that we often take shorter strides, and so in order to continue forward propulsion, we'll sometimes see people shift their hip from side to side rather than extend their hip to move forward. So be mindful of the steps that you're taking while you are pushing a stroller so that you are utilizing your typical gait cycle as opposed to shifting the hips side to side.